Most people know John Hancock for one thing, a name written so large on a single piece of paper that it became a synonym for a signature itself. Even today, when someone says, "Put your John Hancock here," they're unknowingly echoing the legacy of an 18th century merchant from Boston. But John Hancock was far more than a flamboyant autograph. He was a businessman, a politician, a revolutionary leader, and a man whose wealth and reputation made him both powerful and vulnerable at a moment when defying the British Empire carried very real risks. John Hancock was born on January 23, 1737, in Braintree, Massachusetts, a small town just outside Boston. His father was a minister, but he died when John was only 7 years old. The loss changed the course of Hancock's life. He was taken in by his uncle, Thomas Hancock, one of the wealthiest merchants in New England. Thomas Hancock had built a fortune through trade across the Atlantic, supplying goods to Britain and its colonies, and he had no children of his own. John quickly became not just a nephew, but an heir. Hancock received an elite education for the time. He attended Boston Latin School and later graduated from Harvard College in 1754. Unlike many revolutionary figures who rose from modest backgrounds, Hancock entered adulthood with privilege, social standing, and access to power. When his uncle died in 1764, Hancock inherited a vast fortune, a thriving mercantile business, and a prominent place in Boston society. At first, Hancock had no desire to rebel against Britain. His wealth depended on trade within the British Empire, and stability served him well. But the political climate in the colonies was changing rapidly. After the costly French and Indian War, the British government began imposing new taxes on the colonies, including the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act. These laws were deeply unpopular, especially among merchants who felt targeted and exploited without representation in Parliament. Hancock soon found himself caught between loyalty to the system that made him rich and growing resistance among colonial leaders. British customs officials closely monitored his business, suspecting smuggling, which was widespread at the time. In 1768, Hancock's ship, the Liberty, was seized by British authorities for alleged violations of customs laws. The incident sparked riots in Boston and made Hancock a symbol of resistance against British overreach. Whether Hancock had actually broken the law mattered less than how the public perceived the event. To many colonists, the seizure of the Liberty represented tyranny. Hancock's wealth and visibility turned him into a lightning rod. He began aligning more openly with the Patriot cause, funding resistance efforts and supporting organizations that challenged British authority. By the early 1770s, Hancock was deeply involved in colonial politics. He served in the Massachusetts colonial legislature and later became president of the Second Continental Congress in 1775. This was not a ceremonial role. As president, Hancock presided over debates during one of the most volatile periods in American history, including the decision to create the Continental Army. In June 1775, Hancock signed the commission appointing George Washington as commander-in-chief. The choice was strategic. Washington was respected, experienced, and from Virginia, helping unite northern and southern colonies. Hancock himself had hoped for the role, and the decision reportedly disappointed him, revealing the personal ambitions that coexisted with his public service. Hancock's prominence made him a target. British officials viewed him as one of the leading agitators in Massachusetts. In April 1775, British troops were dispatched to arrest Hancock and Samuel Adams in Lexington. The mission failed. Thanks to advance warning, Hancock escaped, though accounts suggest he initially resisted leaving, reluctant to appear cowardly. Hours later, the first shots of the American Revolutionary War were fired at Lexington and Concord. As the war progressed, Hancock's political influence remained significant, but his military role was limited. He served as governor of Massachusetts for most of the period between 1780 and 1785, and again from 1787 until his death. As governor, Hancock balanced revolutionary ideals with a desire for stability.
He was popular with the public, known for his generosity, personal charm, and ability to navigate political tensions. In 1776, Hancock performed the act that would define his place in popular memory. As President of the Continental Congress, he was the first to sign the Declaration of Independence. He signed boldly, writing his name large and centered on the document. Later, myths claimed he did so King George III could read it, but there is no historical evidence that Hancock said this. What is clear is that his signature carried enormous weight. As a well-known, wealthy leader, Hancock had much to lose. By signing, he openly committed treason against the British Crown. The consequences of that decision were real. British forces later occupied Boston and confiscated Hancock's property. His fortune suffered during the war, though he remained far wealthier than most of his contemporaries. Still, Hancock continued to finance the revolutionary cause, using his resources to support the fledgling nation. After independence, Hancock played a complex role in the formation of the United States. He was cautious about the new Constitution drafted in 1787, initially refusing to support it. Massachusetts was deeply divided over ratification, and Hancock held the balance of power. In the end, he proposed a series of amendments that helped secure approval. Many of these ideas would later influence the Bill of Rights. Despite his influence, Hancock never became President of the United States. He was considered a potential candidate, but declining health and political calculations kept him from seeking the office seriously. He suffered from chronic illness, likely gout, which limited his mobility and energy. John Hancock died on October 8, 1793, at the age of 56. He was buried in Boston's Granary Burying Ground, alongside other figures of the American Revolution, including Samuel Adams and Paul Revere. His death was widely mourned, especially in Massachusetts, where he had been a dominant political figure for decades. Today, John Hancock is often reduced to a signature, but that signature represents something larger. It symbolizes the willingness of a privileged man to risk status, wealth, and safety for a cause that was far from guaranteed to succeed. Hancock was not a flawless hero. He was ambitious, image-conscious, and sometimes cautious when boldness was required. But he was also generous, influential, and deeply committed to the idea of American self-government. In a revolution shaped by farmers, soldiers, philosophers, and firebrands, John Hancock stood out as a man who understood power from the inside and chose, at a critical moment, to turn that power against an empire. His name endures not because it was written large, but because the decision behind it was larger still.